Welcome to the Sencast. My name is Dale Pickles. I'm the Managing Director of B Squared and the host of the Sencast, the podcast for special educational needs and disability. In this episode, we discussed the question, what do neurodiverse girls need to know about romance? And this week I was joined by Kim McCabe, the founder of Rights for Girls CIC, an organisation dedicated to making growing up kinder for girls and saner for parents. Kim also appears on BBC and Sky News as a child development expert. Here at B Squared, we help schools to show progress for a wide range of abilities and ages. We have a range of frameworks that students from birth all the way through to 25 for our most complex learners, which more and more schools need support with. Working for those students working within the engagement model or below their main curriculum, we have our engagement steps, and this can help build a profile of the student needs and show the progress they're making, whether it's spiky, whether it's a progress towards achieving, whatever that progress looks like, we can show. Visit the B Square website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through our assessment software. But for now, let's get on with that podcast. My guest this week is Kim McCabe, the founder of Rights for Girls CIC, an organisation dedicated to making growing up kinder for girls and saner for parents. Kim is the author of From Daughter to Woman, a parenting guide praised for its wise and practical support through the teen years. And Kim also appears on BBC and Sky News as a child development expert. Welcome to the show, Kim.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having me back, Dale.
Oh, you are very, very welcome. Neurodivergent individuals often struggle with friendships, and as our children get older, they start to think about dating. And this brings in so many additional complexities. And this is true for boys and girls. But today we're focusing on the girls. And as a parent of two neurodivergent girls, there is a lot to discuss. There's a lot going on, isn't there?
There really is. And what I always want to start with in this conversation is that not to separate romance from friendship, and that actually to remind our children, boys and girls, neurodiverse and not, that they already know a lot about what they need to know as they think about entering into romantic relationships. So they don't set it apart as something totally different that they know nothing about, that they have to kind of start afresh. So particularly to our neurodivergent children, as you said, they have a sense in which friendships, relationships are can be challenging, but they know an awful lot. They've had a whole lifetime of learning about how to make friends, how to choose friends, what is a good friend. And all of that information needs to be the starting point of a romantic relationship. So you start with, it's so easy to get completely focused on the physical side of things because that's sort of what sets a romance apart from other friendships. But let's start with all the other stuff first, the stuff that children already know about. So how do you pick a friend? Well, it's got to be someone that you feel you have something in common with, someone who you share interests or values. And when you talk to them, it's interesting and they find you interesting. It's also got to be someone that you feel you can trust, so that if you share some of your more vulnerable thoughts and feelings, or you share something that's private, that they are going to not only listen and respect it, but not tell everybody else. And then, of course, there's also, it's on the sort of the mental, the emotional, and the spiritual side first, and then it moves into the physical. And so in our Girls Journeying Together groups, we invite girls who are 10, 11, 12 years old, first of all, to start thinking about all that they already know about friendship, all that they've already learned about what makes a good friend, how do you keep a good friend, how do you get to know someone when you kind of are interested in them and you don't yet know them. All of those things are the starting off point for a romantic relationship. And as far as parents are concerned, this is a conversation you don't wait. You don't wait until your child is in their teens. This is a sort of thing that you bring into their awareness and their kind of, and your conversation long before they even enter their preteens, so that they already feel like you're someone who they can ask questions and talk things through about, so that you become and make sure that you are a trusted adult, someone, because it's a confusing world for everyone. Whether you're neurodivergent or not, it's a confusing world. And if you are neurodivergent, it can be even more confusing. So that actually was the thing that I wanted to impress most importantly, is that how important it is that young people feel that they have elders and buddies, older buddies and same-age buddies that they can talk to about all of this stuff, because this is new territory. And when you go into new territory and you don't have a map, you want to have someone who can you can check in with and can be a guide. And as a parent, we certainly want to be in that team, so that we open up that conversation really early on in a child's life. Whether it be because you see something on the television and you just kind of say, oh, I wonder why that person did that or said that, or and then when we start in Girls Journeying Together groups talking about it, we start with where they're at. So whilst at school, they're often teaching them the kind of mechanic of a romantic relationship and about keeping safe. And actually, the very first thing that the way it's starting point is, how do you know if you're crushing on someone? And then what do you do if you start to fancy someone? And how do you know if someone fancies you? And what do you do if someone fancies you but you don't fancy them? That's the starting place. That's where the conversations need to begin.
Definitely. Interesting. One of the things you started talking about, like the parents and their role. And one of the things I think you almost forget is the relationships you have as an adult, as a parent. That is you being a role model for your children. In what does a relationship look like? You are literally, by the parents, they've got that inside view of what that relationship looks like. So however you are behaving, you are telling your children this is what what a relationship looks like. So there might be some times where you may have to go over and above and explaining why the relationship is the way it is and things like that. And it's all about teaching that respect for each other. And it's got to be a respectful relationship.
And to make it explicit, and this is really the role of the fathers. Mothers are often taken for granted by children. The same ways we treat Mother Earth for granted. It's like she's just always there. You can rely on her. Father is the teacher of relationship. Father, particularly if a child has their father actively in their lives, but otherwise other important men, are often the first person that the child looks at outside of themselves. They're often quite merged with mother. So the first person that they really feel is other is father, if he's around. And father is teacher of relationship, and how you treat the child's mother and how you treat your child becomes the blueprint for what your child will expect in their important relationships. So you're absolutely right. Respect, listening, trust. When we're building those things, both between the adults in a child's life and between parent and child, then essentially you are putting into your child, without them even really realizing it, what their expectations are. You set the bar, and we want to set it high. So that's why it's so important that parents not only attend to the dynamic between them, and, raising children's a stressful thing, and we all go through times where we know the relationship isn't doing so well, and it's very easy to kind of push that to one side and go, well, when the children have grown up, we'll have some time together. No, we need to prioritize our relationship, have a date night regularly, check in with each other daily, whatever it is, whatever the cocktail is for you as two adults in a child's life, that tends to your relationship, knowing always that what you're doing is modeling, always what you're doing is showing them the way. And so, because so much of a parent's relationship is somewhat private from the children, as you said, Dale, it's also important sometimes to sort of spell it out. So if they see the row or the beginnings of the row, and then several hours later you seem to be all good, and they don't know that actually you sat down together with a cup of tea for or went out for a walk around the garden for 5 minutes and kind of had it out, then you haven't taught them some of the really key and important tools for being in a close and intimate relationship with someone.
And and without a doubt, when you have those two parents at home who are in that loving relationship, that is the ultimate best role models. And as you said, the father is that kind of person who teaches about relationships. If that father isn't present, that is also teaching something, whether you want it to or not. That is teaching. You have kids, father. There are so many things, and I'm not going to go hugely into that. But whether or not you are in a healthy, lovely relationship, it's not going well or whatever it is, children will pick up on it much more, and children will learn from how you are, and whether things have fallen apart for a good reason, bad reason, whatever reason, there is, however you treat each other as respectful, you should be respectful to each other. If you can only do it in front of the children, but they will pick up on it, and you are teaching them through your actions what relationships look like and what you do when it goes wrong.
Absolutely. And we don't all have the luxury of being in a good relationship. I'm in a long-term marriage. I tell you, it's had seasons. There's been times when it's been really tricky. And interestingly, with the hundreds of children I've worked with, one common theme is children usually think it's their fault. If the adults around them aren't getting on, children think it's their fault. So if you do nothing else, make sure that you explicitly tell your children, each of your children, that what they're picking up on or what they see going on between the adults in their lives isn't their fault.
And it doesn't help if you've got lovely, happy photos of you and your partner all around the house on your wedding day and dating, and then there aren't any photos. It's one of those things where you're going, of course I'm happy with the kids, of course I'm. Children do pick up on, or they infer the wrong things sometimes, and sometimes because the evidence isn't obviously present in the house. And it's that sort of thing that they can pick up on these things. Well, you were happy when you were dating, but now I'm here, you're not. Must be me.
Yeah.
And even exactly. Oh no, it's not you. It's because we can't afford stuff because of, so it's back to me again. And it's really hard. However, it's not the children, for it can sound like to their ears it is them.
Of course. And so that's why they need to hear us say it over and over again. They need that reassurance. And, we do sometimes team up with a parent with whom we're not going to spend the rest of our lives. And marriages and partnerships separate, and that's part of ordinary life. I think the key thing with the children is just to surround them by good role models. If it doesn't have to be the parents, just make sure that in your community you spend time with people who treat each other well. And doesn't have to be parents, just so they get that they're surrounded by good relationship role models.
Yeah, I mean, it is one of every relationship is different, and you may think you can hide things from them. But if you're all smiles and happy when you think they're around, they know you're not when you're not around, or when you don't think they're around, they will be picking up on it and they will be drawing their own conclusions. So sometimes, as you said, being explicit, we sometimes have to overanalyze ourselves and share more than we want to, maybe, about the situation to help our children understand those situations.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's sometimes just making our inner voice verbal. It's like, I'm so irritated. He's left his whatever again. I'm actually just going to walk down the garden and back again because that will make me feel better. Or, when he gets home, I'm going to have a word and then say, do you know what? Actually, he's had a really hard day. He's got free pass. It's actually not important.
And that's the thing. There are things that wind us up, not because of our partner's done something, but we're also wound up in that moment.
Mm.
So it's not that he's left his wallet or he's done this. It's because I've also got this on, and that's just the final bit, which has tipped me over the edge.
Yeah.
On a good day, it wouldn't have. And it's all those sorts of complexities that our children, for the right reason, hopefully do not have that level of complexity in their life. They're having quite a nice, simple life. Their disaster is running out of cereal, or their favourite TV, iPad being flat, things like that's what we hope their dramas are. Whereas adults, we've got a lot more complicated dramas going on, all on top of each other, very multifaceted, and it's all going on.
But this point about making things kind of clear and explicit is something that I think is especially important when we are preparing our children for romance, because this is an area where a lot is just assumed. It's sort of assumed that people will kind of just pick it up or just know it or will learn it by experience. And actually, particularly our neurodivergent children, it's really useful to talk some of this stuff through first, because it is a whole new territory, and anything new that feel kind of complicated and possibly confusing, it's really useful to be able to talk about it with people and to have already spoken about it. So use films, use things that have come up in songs to kind of talk about, oh, that song's all about this. What do you think about it? So that the conversation is already one that is open and happening in your home.
And it's interesting you talked about the media, and that's, I think, the reason why we're talking about girls today and not girls and boys. Is boys are generally the instigator. They are the one who are chasing. They're the one who's fighting over. If you look at all over history, it's always the woman is seen as the prize that the men go after. Which means that if you are female, whether you like it or not, you are going to get attention.
Yes.
Whereas if you are a neurodivergent boy, you are supposed to make the effort. You're supposed to make the moves. If you don't have that confidence, you're generally not. And that's the difference, I think, because it happens to the girls. You can't just say it won't happen. It's always going to happen to girls.
Yes. And when I was preparing, knowing that we were going to talk about today, Dale, I thought, there's so much I've got to say here. There's so much I've got to share. So I thought, okay, Kim, make it simple. So I've come down to 5 key things I really want to share. And one of them is one you've just said, is being chosen is not the same as being valued. And I think a lot of girls and neurodiverse girls take the kind of another person's interest as something that they have to kind of reciprocate and have to respond to. And that actually being chosen feels lovely. But I think neurodiverse girls can be incredibly loyal and perceptive and generous. And that can make them vulnerable to mistaking someone else's attention for their care. Someone wanting you or needing you or wanting to lean on you emotionally, it's not the same as them necessarily respecting your boundaries and your time and your own inner world. So whilst those two things can come together, it's important not to conflate them, to know that they're, just because someone fancies you or is interested in you doesn't necessarily mean you have to be interested in them or that you have to give them whatever it seems to be that they want from you.
That is a really good starting point, because it's, again, multifaceted. There's a lot going on there, and it is just because someone shows interest in you, that doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be a relationship.
No.
You might be, again, it's that physical attraction. That's generally where it often starts. That's the reason you go, I like them. But there's so many levels past that physical attraction that actually that's what decides whether a relationship works.
Yeah. And when you have
that reciprocation is key.
Yes.
Balanced relationship.
And although it can often be that physical reaction, and I get girls in our groups to kind of figure out in their bodies how they know they're attracted to someone. What part of your body tells you? And for different people, it's different. Some people feel like suddenly they can't think straight. They don't know where to look. some people get a fizzy feeling in their tummy, or they don't know where to put their hands, or whenever that person comes in the room, they're suddenly really super alert and they know exactly where they are and what they're saying. Or they feel suddenly like they don't know, they can't say a thing. So first of all, it's really useful to know your own body and your own self before you're responding or reacting to someone else's interest in you. How do you know if you're interested in someone else? And it can be felt on a very physical level, and it can be useful to be really clear about what that feels like. But then going back to where we started, then check in, all the things you know about friendship. Just because you're physically attracted to this person, do you like them? Do they seem like a nice, kind person? Do they feel like someone you could trust? Do they share interests with you? So not just taking that physical attraction, that feeling of crushing on someone or being excited by them physically, to then check that out with, and would this make a good partner? Would this be somebody who I want to spend chunks of time with? So checking in with everything you already know about friendship. And then I want to come on to my second point, which is that intensity of feeling is not the same as intimacy. And I think a lot of neurodiverse children experience their feelings very intensely. It's a superpower, actually. It's something very, very special. But I think crushes for them can sometimes feel very all-consuming. They can feel urgent or as if it's fate. And that doesn't necessarily mean that the relationship is right or mutual or safe or deep, because romance is not proved by obsession or by constantly being kind of in contact with a person or being overwhelmed by them emotionally. It's really important to learn to pace it. So pay attention to those feelings of attraction, but then check it out with what you also know about friendship. And just because you feel something very strongly doesn't necessarily mean it's right, and doesn't necessarily mean it's reciprocated.
Now, this is where we come into the blokes and women, men and Venus, from all that, because that's very deep. From a point of view, it's kind of like, oh, I like them. But for me, I think, and again, it's kind of touching on that thing of, if you're lacking in confidence, and this is starting to that danger, if you're lacking in confidence, if you maybe don't have friends and you're struggling and you're feeling alone, and then someone shows interest in you, that can just, you go through those processes you talked about. You're kind of going, someone likes me, this is great, I must like them. And because you like that interest, that person showing interest in you, and it can lead you down a really bad rabbit hole that actually you're putting yourself in situations you shouldn't be in just because someone's shown interest in you.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's lovely to be liked, but don't confuse that with that you're interested. You might be interested in being liked, but check out that you're interested in the person who likes you.
Yes.
And check out not just whether it's a physical attraction, but also whether they are someone who your friends like. That can be a really good indicator. Someone who your parent likes. Don't make this decision or this choice on your own. Get the people who like you to check them out too. And so again, just pace yourself, go slowly. You don't necessarily immediately have to go, with boyfriend and girlfriend, we're going to go on a date. It's like often spending time with that person in a group and just seeing how they relate to you in a group, and your friends are around you and they see that too. And then you talk to your friends. What do you think about that person? Or if your parents sort of are involved in the taxiing, which they often are, what do they think? Because the people who know and love you are going to also have some good insight into the kind of person who you may really enjoy and want to become, a friend, and then possibly one step further into a romantic friendship.
Definitely. What's your number 3?
My number 3. Okay, so this really is something that I have learned from the girls that I work with. Just because someone's interested in you, and even if you have entered into the beginnings of a romantic relationship with somebody, you don't owe anybody access to your body or your time or your emotions. And I think this is particularly important to stress and to share with neurodiverse girls, because they grow up masking, pleasing and adapting, in order to belong. It's something they've had to do to fit in at school, to fit in with their social groups. And in the romantic relationship, this can end up girls overgiving or staying in a relationship when something feels wrong, or saying yes when actually their body says no. And consent isn't just about sex. It's about the pace. It's about the pressure that they feel they're under. It's about choice at absolutely every stage. So this is something that girls really need permission, and neurodiverse girls especially need permission. This is not a time necessarily to fit in. This is not a time to mask and suppress your feelings. Pay attention to your feelings. They are a really important guide as to whether right now, in this moment, with this person, feels good and right and okay. And that's not to say, you see, this is where it's confusing, because everybody feels stressed at the start of a romantic relationship. It's like it's exciting, but it's also terrifying. And so how do you know? How do you know what feels right or wrong? What feels like the right pace? And so what I often say to girls is yes means yes, no means no, and I'm not sure means no, not quite yet. So if there's any uncertainty, slow it down. There's no hurry. It's not a race. There's nothing to prove. You don't have to prove that you feel something for someone by letting them do things or ask for things that you don't yet feel ready for. And I think this is really important permission to give to girls in particular, because there's so much pressure to make ourselves available and to show our affection by saying yes.
Definitely. And right at the beginning, you talked about if someone is interested in you, you don't owe them anything.
Mm.
I would just change that a bit. If someone says they are interested, because that's a thing when you generally go into a relationship with that honesty. But for teenagers, there are so many things going on with those young people that they might say they're interested, but is that the real feeling? Is it a dare? Is it everyone else's boyfriends and girlfriends and they're alone and you'll do? Or you'll look like you'll say yes or whatever. All that's the thing is, are they really interested? Or are they just doing it for a different... And that's the thing, I think, that's the problem with girls, with the most complex is the boys are the ones making the moves. And as you said, if someone's made a move or they've done that crushing or whatever it is, that feeling you have the right to say no at every single moment.
And, how do you find out if the interest is real? Because actually, if it's another boy or a girl who's showing that initial interest, they're probably not entirely sure either. That it's a delicate dance where you're starting to kind of find out more about each other. So it's a really good question to think, how do I know if someone's interest is genuine? Well, it's the same as in a friendship. How do you know if someone genuinely wants to be your friend? That they're not just after your Mars bar, or your smelly rubber, so eraser. It's a really good conversation to have. How do we know? Well, it's a delicate dance. It's when we say this, how do they respond? Does it feel genuine? How do you know when something doesn't feel genuine? This is, the nursery playground of romantic relationships that is the world of the teenager and the young adult is the place where you mess up, you make mistakes, and it's actually fine to mess up, and everybody's going to mess up. So bringing a sense of humour to it all is really important, because there is no right and wrong way of doing this, and we are all going to make mistakes, but you can always rupture and repair. You know, if you say something that afterwards you go home and you're like, oh, I've ruined it. It's like, no, you haven't. You can go back and you can say, you know, yesterday when I said that, it's because I was feeling really anxious, or I thought you meant that, but actually, I really like you. Can we start again? Or whatever it is that kind of takes you back to repairing whatever you feel you've done that was silly.
But again, in that same situation, how they respond to that tells you a lot as well. So when you do muck up and you're going, oh my God, I did it because of this, and you're kind of hiding it, when it takes two to tango, yeah? So even if you've made a mistake and you hurt their feelings, either of you can bridge that gap. And when one of you's bridging it, what's the other person doing? There's loads of things like that you can pick up on. And sometimes it's going back to that trusted adult, having someone you can have a conversation with and going, this happened. And when they're asking you questions, they're not really going, what's he done to my daughter or anything. What he's asking is, okay, so that happened. How was it? What we're looking for as parents is, did that young person show compassion? Did it show an interest? Were they just brushing you off? That's what we're really trying to get that insight into.
Yeah, and as a parent also, it's so easy to want to kind of get involved because we love and care for our children and want to safeguard them, and they feel so vulnerable and at this stage. But really what we want to be is a trusted guide. So it's all about questions. It's all about trusting our children that actually they know what's best for them. They don't need us to tell them, but they might need a little help with just connecting with or understanding or realizing. And we can help them that with loads of questions, open questions, not do you think, which has a yes or no answer, but what do you wish you'd said? How do you think he felt? What did that make you feel when they said that? Questions that just help them to become a little bit more aware of what's going on, how they feel, how they imagine the other person feels, what they think's going on. Who else was there that you might be able to ask? So that essentially they don't feel on their own. And ultimately, it is down to them who they pick, who they want to be with, who they feel comfortable with. And so, again, if we want to be a parent, a go-to parent, a parent that our child feels able to come to us with these really quite intimate questions about romance, then we really need to not place ourselves in any sense of judgment. And that, the judgment hopefully will come from within them as they gradually realize, well, that doesn't feel very respectful, actually. Or, oh my goodness, looked at in that way, that was really kind. Because what often our children are just still learning is how to step out of themselves and into the other. And so helping them to kind of, start to muse or imagine on what might have been going on for the other person. Why do you think they said that? What made them do that?
It's when you start asking them, what else happened to them that day? Oh, this happened. Yeah. Cool. Do you think they might have had anything? They start going, and that's the thing, I think with my daughter, one of the things that I've helped her understand with friendships and romance is generally it's not about you. Generally, someone's doing something because of them. You might be the target, but you're not the cause or the reason. So their behavior might be at you, but it's not because of you. But then they read into it because they get a bit worried and they go, have I done something wrong? Have I mucked it up? It's like it's unpicking that and helping them see that in reality, it's the same with your loved one. When your children unload at you, it's because they love you and they know you'll forgive them and still love them. There's I think you start hitting that. And again, going back to that kind of nursery world of learning how to have these relationships is, I think one of the things these people are hitting at in school is they've had friends or they've learnt how friendships work through school. And they've not learnt it through osmosis. They've learnt it explicitly and they've got all these rules on how friends are. But now they're getting into a relationship. They now have a special friend, their romantic friend. How's that that breaks all their rules. Are they going to stop being with their friends? Or are they going to keep their friends and that's for home time and after school? they've got to learn how that relationship fits in with their life. And they've never experienced it before. And they've also, mum and dad were in a relationship beforehand, so I don't even know how that started either. So again, that's another whole world of them having to learn how this works. And they're only going to learn, as you said, through those mistakes.
And we need to remember as the adults in their lives that, oh my goodness, that first love, it just feels like it's your whole world. And it's very easy to abandon your other friendships, forget your homework, and just kind of want this to just put all your efforts and energy into that. And so having kind of people on the sidelines who can kind of just pull us out and kind of remind us that, what about your old friend that, isn't she having a bit of a hard time now? And, because actually teenagers are quite self-obsessed. It's their brains are changing. There's nothing wrong with them. That self-obsession is absolutely essential for their development. And the other part of their brain that's changing is they feel things more intensely than they did as children or as we do as adults. And so really important not to minimize their feelings. They do feel things more intensely. And so, but to help them with that, because it can become all-consuming. It can take over their whole lives. And so sometimes we need to be a bit of their prefrontal cortex. We have to kind of help them regulate when, a little argument suddenly feels like the world is over and they can't go to school. And in fact, they can't imagine even carrying on living. And not to forget that those feelings are very real and are felt at that level of intensity. So to think about, what does my child need in that instance? Maybe it is a day off school and a wrapping up in a blanket and a chance just to cry and cry and cry. And then to kind of put in at a certain point, let me tell you about my first love.
Not that. You're better off without him.
No.
Not yet.
Not at that point.
Okay, what's your number 4?
My number 4. Okay, so how do I put this? Confusion is information. I think particularly neurodiverse children can often feel confused in relationships. And then they feel like it's a failing. It's like, oh, this is my neurodiversity. This is me not being good at relationships. I don't know what's going on. No. Treat that confusion as information. If a relationship feels confusing, or if it's inconsistent, or it feels destabilizing, it's not because you're doing anything wrong, or you're not doing something, or you're not good at romance, or you are too much. It means that you're getting mixed messages, that maybe there is some emotional unpredictability, or a power imbalance that is creating that confusion. So take that confusion seriously, but take it to your trusted adult. They'll help you think it through. What's going on here? Because a healthy relationship will become clearer and clearer and clearer over time, not more disorientating. So if you're in a romantic relationship where you constantly feel like you don't know where you are and you don't know where you stand and you don't know how the other person's going to behave, that's useful information about that relationship. It does not mean that you're not good at doing romance. And I noticed that the neurodiverse girls that I have worked with and who I know, it's very easy for them to go into, it's my fault, it's my failing, it's something I'm not doing right. No, if you feel destabilized, confused, and uncomfortable, that's good, useful information, and it tells you something about the relationship.
And yeah, if you are confused about where you are, that's almost like that's telling you this isn't a great relationship. I'm going to go to that nice simple term. It's not working well. It's not great. It's not a case of you're unsure, they've recognised it, they're in tune with you and they've picked it up and helped you work it out. And also if you're not feeling open enough to get that understanding, that clarification, then it's not working. Because as you said, the longer that relationship goes on, the closer you should be getting. In reality, the stronger that relationship gets, the more, if you are masking, that mask should come off, because that becomes your trusted person. It's another person you can take that mask off and and they will know that you can rant at them and then you'll look after them. That's what you want from a relationship. And if you're not in that zone, if you're still constantly talking to your parents more about the relationship than the person you're in the relationship is, then again, it's probably not going to go in the way you want it to long term. And there's not a single thing wrong with the two of you. You just don't fit together well.
Yeah,
And that's what you're looking for, is somebody you fit together well with.
And yet it's hard, though, to let go, particularly in early relationships, because you think, well, maybe it'll come right. Maybe if I do this, or I say that, or I stop that will do it. It's very easy to feel like if I just did something different, this could work. And particularly if the relationship has gone on for a few weeks and maybe months, it's almost like you don't want to kind of have wasted all that time, and you don't want to find yourself single again either. So be really careful. We need to give the message that they're really careful not to stay in a relationship that is constantly letting them know isn't really serving them, isn't really making them feel good. And the same is true of friendships, of course, too. So this is true of friendships. Do I feel good after being with this person? Do I feel good while I'm with this person? Or do I not? And if you don't, then it's maybe time to put a little more energy into other friendships and other relationships.
So something I want to discuss, but I want to see what your number 5 is first, in case it is going to be what I want to discuss. So what's your number 5?
So my number 5 is very similar. Romance should support your nervous system, not hijack it. So in a good relationship, the hope is that you feel more and more like yourself, not less like yourself. You can become more grounded, less needing to mask, more yourself, more regulated, and it can be really helpful to notice what the relationship does to your body, to your nervous system. Do you feel calm? Do you feel kind of excited? Do you feel safe? Or do you actually feel a sense of dread or uncertainty or confusion or anxiety? And then to trust that information, to trust what your body and your feelings are telling you about that relationship. Because, of course, at the beginning of any relationship, it's unsettling. So don't take that as being your indicator. But as time goes on, a good romantic relationship, you should feel yourself kind of able to open up like a flower, that you can trust that person that you can be yourself, and you can have bad days, and you can make mistakes, and you can be all over the place and dysregulated, and that you can be accepted for who you are, that you can be who you are. There's no point having a relationship with someone if it's not you who's having it. If you're having to be someone else, pretend to be someone else, to mask, to act, to cover up, to suppress who you are, then it's not you who's in that relationship, it's somebody else. And it's not your relationship. So what you're looking for is, who can you be you in your relationship with? Because then that's a real relationship.
And it's that 50-50, give and take, not one person giving or one person taking. So if you are kind of unmasking and you're having those bad days and you're unloading at them, that can't be one-sided. Is how are you then kind of going? And that, again, that's when you know you're in a great relationship, because when you've unloaded to someone and you literally look back and going, wow, he dealt with that today, I'm going to make it up to him, I'm going to do something. It's kind of, you're doing it because that respect, you're not doing it because if I don't do this, he'll leave me, which is, again, that whole thing. I can imagine going through that do I do this because I want to, or do I do this because I'm scared if I don't do it? And you've got to work out what you feel comfortable is. And I think, as you said, that when you're talking about those early relationships, it is that physical feeling. It's that sort of thing. But I think as you get older, you start to realise, yes, there's that physical bit, but there's so much more which comes after it. And that's the bit that's the really juicy bit. That's the lovely bit. That's the safe bit. That's the I'm glad I'm home bit that evolves. That you know each other, you look after each other, you know what they need, and all that sort of stuff, which comes with a great relationship. But you've got to get there and learn your way of getting there. Now, the bit I wanted to touch on is, we've kind of talked about there are the parents on, I'm going to say a boy-girl relationship. So the parents of the girl, so my daughter, and my daughter in the relationship with the boy, and he's got his parents, and they're helping him with that, and I'm helping my daughter with her bit, and together we're all working towards them having a great relationship or healthy relationship. And if it's not, recognizing that and ending it respectfully. But I think the big problem with teenagers is there's a whole other set of groups of people. There's her friends and his friends. And that's, I think, where things get extremely complicated. When you have single people jealous you're in a relationship. If you're suddenly spending time with your girlfriend instead of not playing football. Or things like that, when you're changing, you're not like how you used to be, and various phrases which are horrible come out. And actually that starts making you feel guilty you're in a relationship. Or are you in a relationship because your friend's in a relationship and we can both talk about our boyfriends or whatever, but actually I'm not happy, but I'm only in it because my friend's in her relationship. You get all of those extra things going on. And actually, do you tell people in your relationship or do you keep it quiet? Do you want to be the hot gossip that everyone's going to talk about for the next 3 months? If you are thinking of breaking up, what's that going to do? Are you going to do it? Who's going to break up with who? Who's going to get dumped? Oh my God, you got dumped. And all that stuff which just goes around secondary schools, and not only within the school, but on social media, I think really confuses this whole process, that you're in a relationship not because of you, but because of other people. And even within that, have you got to here yet? Have you done this yet? And you start feeling, I need to because everyone else is. And you just get manipulated, and you're being manipulated by someone who is also being manipulated. And it gets really quite scary. As a parent watching my daughters go through this, it was really scary watching this manipulation happening.
There's so much pressure. There's so much pressure on girls and boys. And in a way, this is happening on our watch. You know, social media and online access to pornography has happened on our watch. So we need to take responsibility for ameliorating some of the pressures by, one of the things we do in our girls groups is we get these graphs out of the world and we say, okay, what age do you think girls and boys actually really have their first sex? And it comes as a shock to all of the children because, of course, if you listen to the chat around the school, you'd all think that everyone's at it and whatever it is, it's like whatever stage or age it is. And it's never happening at as young as they think it is. So it can be very regulating for them to know that actually the average age is about 18. And that means that lots of people are in their 20s before they even have a serious relationship. So it takes that pressure off. And then the other thing we do is we talk about, what does it mean to be a girlfriend and boyfriend at this age? So and that could be at 10 or at 12, 14, 16, 18. What does it mean? And you actually have really open conversations about what's expected of a boy or a girl to be a girlfriend or boyfriend when you're 14. It's like, and so to really, really get that experience and say, well, okay, what do you see happening? And what do you imagine is happening? And what are you hearing is happening? And do you think it's really happening? And actually, the children aren't stupid. When you actually talk it out, often they're kind of going, yeah, I don't think they're doing that really. But in this day of social media, we really need to counsel our children, and again, girls in particular, about what they share digitally. Because what you share with a friend, a boyfriend, you don't know where that's going to go. And although you think in that moment that's a trusted friend or a boyfriend or girlfriend that you love, things can go sour and people do things in anger or revenge that can have catastrophic effects. So really, we may not feel like talking to our children about sexting or about sending nudes to each other, but we must. And we must help them to understand what the implications might be. Yeah, but you don't understand. We just do it between us and I love him and whatever. It's like, yeah, but let me tell you about this.
Never take the photo.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the ultimate rule. You should never take the photo. Even if you think you're the only person, you just And it's sad to say, until you're really in a full-on relationship, you just should not trust someone. It's one of those things that if that photo gets out, there's no stopping it, and it can ruin lives.
And the trouble is a lot of pressure can come to bear. If you love me, you would. If you really cared about me, then you'd do this. And it's like, that's blackmail, and to recognise it as such, and that is not a loving act. And actually, our children now, none of them enter any kind of relationship without a camera in the room, because most of them have smartphones.
Yeah.
And so it's agreeing that camera doesn't come out and isn't used to kind of share the relationship, because people feel proud of having a girlfriend or boyfriend. So yes, of course you want to share photos of the two of you together, but be really clear about what you show. And the same way as we would never have let our toddlers walk off to the park on their own without ever having kind of taught them road safety, we must do the same in the world of romance. We actually explicitly need to teach them how to stay safe. And it isn't just about using a condom. It's about how to stay safe in terms of what they allow happen to their bodies, because now they're seeing things on pornography that boys are then thinking that's what they're supposed to do. And girls are then thinking, well, that's what I've got to let happen. And so we need to speak openly with our children about things. So, or if you really don't feel like you can, and I do have a chapter in my book, actually, which helps parents find the words to have these kinds of conversations. Because if we didn't have parents or other adults having the kind of conversation with us, we don't feel like we know how to. So there's a chapter in my book which is hopefully giving you some of the words to have these conversations. But if you really feel like you can't, it's still your job to make sure that conversation happens with your child. So find a godparent, an auntie, an uncle, someone who can have that conversation with your child.
And it's important, if you ever going back to that blackmailing, because that's a really important one. And I think with neurodivergent girls and boys, that manipulation, if you loved me, everyone else is, well, if you don't, I'll break up with you. All of those things are absolute red flags, end of relationship stuff. Because even if you don't that time, that kind of behavior will repeat. That behavior will repeat. That is not a healthy relationship. And if you are a young person listening to that and someone has said that to you, you need to know that is not a healthy relationship. No one who really loves someone else would do that sort of thing. If you really love someone, accept them for who they are, what they are, the way they do it, and their speed and what they are comfortable with. You accept that if you love.
And there's nothing wrong with wanting some sort of confirmation or affirmation that your partner is attracted to you or likes you. There's nothing wrong with asking for some sort of, message, some sort of sign. But if you're at all ever feeling like you're being told what that sign has to be, and it's taking you into territory that you don't feel comfortable, then sadly, that's not okay. It's not okay. And you should never feel like you need to prove your affection or your love for someone else.
Never. That should be, if you're having to do that, that is not a healthy relationship. And that is
it can
either
be
way.
hard. Yeah.
That is even if they're kind of ignoring you and you're doing stuff to get their attention, you've got to recognise that that's not a healthy relationship. And again, they might be ignoring you because they're losing interest or they're doing it. There's so many reasons, but everyone needs to be able to recognise what a healthy relationship looks like.
And everyone's learning. Everybody's learning. So everyone's messing up. So make sure you've got some key adults in your life who've got a bit more experience under their belt, who can kind of perhaps guide you. And then if it does come time to end a relationship, that too is really, that's scary. So get some advice about a kind way to do it, but a clear way to do it. And I think oftentimes people can end a relationship in a really unkind way, not because they want to be unkind, but just because they're terrified of and don't know how to end it. So again, getting support, and not necessarily from your girlfriends and boyfriends of the same age, because they're still learning too. Getting it from someone who's a little bit older, who has a bit more experience. They might not understand how it is. So you might need to explain to them how things are now, because things do change and older people don't, it was different for us when we were younger. So it's absolutely fine. You might need to teach them a little bit about what the world is for young people now, but then get their support and guidance in how to do the difficult bits in relationship, whether it's making up or breaking up.
Yes. One thing I talk about, if you're struggling to have those conversations, it can be great to do it in the car because you're not looking at each other. But it can also be great doing it in McDonald's when you're having that something you've done together that you've done as parent and child. You kind of go back to it, and it makes it a safe place, whether it's feeding the ducks, having a Big Mac, or whatever it is. But that sort of activity you've done with your child again and again and again and again, you can sit there and go, "Are you all right?" And they kind of know you're there, and that sort of thing really helps. Not just sitting on the sofa and trying to have that can be really awkward, but kind of finding that way to either avoid looking at each other or kind of being somewhere where they know that this is a loving, caring place and you're there to look after them.
And listening to you, Dale, reminds me how much you love your children, and as a child to remember that your parent absolutely has your best interests at heart. They have loved you their whole lives. They have poured time, energy, money, love, care into you. So if you want to go to someone who's really got your back, hopefully it feels like one of your parents or both of your parents fall into that category, because, sometimes your best friend might not have your best interests at heart, sadly, but your parent usually will.
And again, we're going to circle back to that when someone is interested or says they're interested in you and how you respond. There is do I like them? Do I want this? But then you throw in your friend saying blah, blah, likes you. And you've got that extra thing of being pressured into a relationship because it's kind of what you're supposed to do because everyone else is in a relationship. That's, again, another thing which it may work, but actually, if you're getting into a relationship for other people, it probably won't. And there's a whole load of things like that. So as parents, this comes right back to one of the first things you said. You've got to be educating your children earlier than you realise. Whereas a lot of parents are probably head in the sand, ostriching it, hoping their poor little child won't be in a relationship. Actually, you've got to be proactive and arm them with that information. And if they do get into a relationship, perhaps you have to then talk about what healthy relationships look like. Perhaps you have to inquire what they've been up to. And I don't mean in the bedroom or if they are in the bedroom, but actually, how are they at school? What do they talk about? Finding that and get an inkling of, is it a one-way relationship? Is it a two-way? There's all that sort of stuff you've got to find out about.
Also, another thing as a parent, and this is something that worked really well for me with our children, especially now we're in the age where everyone has a phone. My children knew that if ever they texted me a kiss, I would phone them up and I would say, something's come up, I really need to come and get you, where are you? And then when I pick them up,
it's a bit worrying that your children send you kisses that you think it's a problem. But I know exactly, we have the same thing with my daughter. It's a code word.
It needs to be something that if someone else saw the phone, they wouldn't go, oh, what are you doing? It was like, oh no, I have a thing with my parent. I have to just send them something to know I'm okay. But actually, if they sent me a kiss, I'd phone them up. I'd go and get them. And then the other promise is I would ask them no questions.
Yeah, no, completely agree. Yeah, it's the same like asking for Angela. It's the same thing. You set this up with your children, and it doesn't even have to be for a relationship. This is for any situation. If they're at a party or a sleepover that they are not enjoying, and for me, I think for neurodiverse boys and girls, this is something you do really early on. If they are not enjoying it, but they want to get out, You take the blame.
Yeah.
That's your role. You
Yeah.
take the blame. You find some excuse to pull them out. They will look really sad, get in the car and go, thank you. Yeah. You build these things in.
Yeah. Day or night, I've turned out in my pajamas.
Yes, without a doubt. And completely agree. The last thing I kind of just want to touch on, it keeps coming into my head and then disappearing and it's gone again. It's not changing yourself for the other person. So, boys and girls, if you have a boyfriend, you do not have to delete all the boys' numbers out of your phone. If you are a girl or a boy and you have a girlfriend, you do not have to delete all the other girls' numbers. You do not have to stop talking to every member. You should change nothing about you. You should be you. Now, there are things you will change, but that is through choice, respect, honesty, which you will maybe not that you're doing things, but you'll just make sure you'll do things. That will happen through, you'll learn that and you'll know. But you shouldn't have to change what you're doing for the other person. That's one thing I just want to end on, that I think a lot of people, young people, seem to think that they have to change to make the other person happy. And I think as people plead with neurodiversity, that's a big thing they do. And you do not, you should not.
We absolutely have a huge responsibility for happiness. Our own.
Yes.
Nobody else's. They're responsible for their happiness. You're responsible for your own. And it's very easy to part company with that when you're in a relationship or a friendship and you want the other person to feel happy. Just make sure that that does not go counter to your own happiness and your own life. Absolutely, Dale. I think that's a lovely way to end. But actually, any relationship, friendship or romantic relationship, should increase your happiness.
Yes.
And if it doesn't in any way, that's worth just taking a look at.
And there are always going to be times when you have challenges and problems and you need, it might be a one-way thing for a short while, but it should be a short while, shouldn't be an ongoing, shouldn't be a permanent. I think sometimes that short term becomes longer term without people realizing.
And, finding a person who wants to spend acres of time with you and you are able to be yourself with them, it is a wonderful thing. It's a truly wonderful thing. And we want it for our children. We want it for the next generation. But we want it at their pace and done healthily and safely. And what I really wanted to finish with is that this is not something that we need to abandon our children to. It's like us staying involved in this is an integral part of raising children, whether you're a teacher or a parent. Being an adult in their lives is a really important role through navigating this aspect of growing up. Because they are just baby adults.
They are. And again, I think you also have to help them see that, yes, there is that physical attraction, but that's the start. That's the spark. Mm. The flame is personality. Mm. The flame, without a doubt, is that personality. And if you kind of think about your partner and you think about what you love about them, it's never how they look. It's never their eyes, their nose, or anything. It's how they make you feel. And you unpick that, and what is it? And it is something they do because they paid attention to you. It's the way they do something. It's a memory you have of them. That is absolutely fascinating. That's the bit you remember, and it's helping your children understand that actually, with these relationships, the bits you will miss, the bits you cherish, are not necessarily about how your kind of other person looks. It's much more than that. So, yes, choosing someone just based on their looks, not necessarily the right thing to do. There's a lot more after that you need to pay attention to. And I'm going to wrap it up there. So I normally say a big thank you for coming on the show today, but Kim has literally had a power cut just as we ended the podcast. So a big thank you, Kim. As always, you'll find Kim's contact details in our show notes, and you'll also find lots of links that Kim shared, including a link to her book, which is called From Daughter to Woman, Parenting Girls Safely Through Their Teens. Okay, so that's from Kim, and you'll find a link to that in our show notes. And as always, you'll find the show notes wherever you listen to the podcast or on the Zencast website. And if you want to get in touch, let us know your thoughts, suggest topics or anything else, please send us a message through social media or send an email to hello@thezencast. Here at B Squared, we help schools to show progress for a wide range of abilities and ages. We have a range of frameworks to suit students from birth all the way through to 25. And at that top end, we have our Steps for Life framework that assesses functional academic skills, employability skills, and life skills. And for the most complex learners working within the engagement model zone, our engagement steps can build a profile of the student needs and how and show the progress they're making, however small. Visit the B Square website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through our assessment software and how it can help you. So thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Zencast. It's goodbye from me and goodbye from Kim. Bye, everyone.